So here I am with the annual, the NBA All-Star Weekend was terrible video. Man, welcome. First and foremost, I do want to give a huge shout out to you all before I get deep into this video because this was the first time I actually went to All-Star Weekend. And the only reason why I was able to be out there is because of all of the love and support that many of you all have shown me, especially over the past 2 to 3 months, with this channel in particular growing at an exponential rate, as well as what I'm doing over at playback.tv when it comes to streaming a lot of these games. Shout out to you all. I thank you all. So you put me in a position to go out in All-Star Weekend, and for the most part, I enjoyed myself. San Francisco, beautiful city, amazing city. Outside of the wealth and equality, still a really great city. And I actually got the ability to go to an event or two, went to the celebrity game. Shout out to my brother Kai. He was out there, he was playing, had a really good time. I actually was able to go through the tunnel because I had some VIP access, so that was great. Was unable to watch the Rising Star game because effectively those two events were happening right after the other, and you had to travel from the Oracle Arena to Chase Center, and there's too much traffic going on for me to get to both, but still caught up on it. I thought that was great. But then the rest of the weekend was pretty hit or miss, and it wasn't because of the NBA players, or at least for the most part. A lot of it just had to do with the fact that the broadcast team and TNT were horrible, and the commissioner, for whatever reason, deciding that All-Star Weekend needed to be filled with a bunch of pauses, breaks, and advertisements. I just don't understand why that was a thing whatsoever. I really don't understand it, which is kind of crazy because for the first time, the fix can be very simple. Now, before I get into what actually occurred, just a quick brief background of what exactly was going on heading into the events themselves. For those who may not be aware, All-Star Weekend, in particular All-Star Game over the past couple of years, including the Slam Dunk Contest as well, has been just thrown with a bunch of criticism its way with the lack of effort defensively shown by a lot of these stars. And of course, there had to be some type of change because it became basically unbearable outside of games or moments where the score was close enough to where opposing teams were actually going back and forth with one another. So of course, they decided to do different things. In recent memory, probably the biggest change that I enjoyed personally was when they went into a more recess playground style where you would have these players choose their teams instead of having the traditional East and West format. I personally enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching LeBron and Giannis or KD, whoever was involved, who was the team captain, who got the most fan votes. They were the team captains. They selected their teams. I actually enjoyed that. I really did. Not only because it eliminated conferences, as the Eastern Conference didn't really have the same talent that was going on out in the West, but it also added a layer of drama. So I did enjoy that. However, this year they decided to go a completely different format, bring in tournament style formatting for the All-Star game, have all of the 24 All-Stars being selected, break them down into 3 teams being selected by Kenny, Shaq, and Charles Barkley. And then from there, the last team in the tournament style, bracket style formatting was going to be the winners from the Rising Star game, which was all very complicated, very convoluted. Also take into consideration that all of these games being played were at a 40-point limit, and it really and truly left a lot of people questioning what exactly was going to occur coming into All-Star Weekend. Also take into consideration that the 3-point competition was not going to consist of Curry, which was concerning. Last year was a pretty huge win for the NBA when they had both Curry and Sabrina Ionescu out there shooting threes. Conversations on, hey, can we get Caitlin Clark involved? They decided not to. Actually, Caitlin Clark and a lot of other WNBA players, they declined the opportunity of doing so, which I understand why they would do that. But in my opinion, I believe there was a much bigger opportunity miss. I don't know why. If Curry was willing to participate and they just need a WNBA player to go, and that fell through, why not just go after Klay Thompson? I feel like this would have been the perfect year, and I do mean the perfect year, for Curry and Klay to go back and forth with one another at the All-Star game. It's in the Bay. They're no longer on the same team with one another. This is something that they have been hinting at for the past couple of years anyway. I don't know. I feel like this has been the perfect time to do that, but unfortunately missed on that opportunity. Also heading into the weekend, we're going to have another Mac McClung headliner at the dunk contest, which in my opinion didn't really disappoint, but I'll talk about that later. And then heading into the actual game itself, you had Giannis, AD, then later on Anthony Edwards and LeBron, who did not participate in the festivities due to injuries. Unfortunately, both Anthony Edwards and LeBron, they decided to make their unavailability known at the last minute, so there wasn't any reserves or any replacement for those two, and a lot of people got upset at that, which in my opinion really wasn't that big of a deal. Now, as someone who was there, who actually went to one of the events and just was in the city and the vibes of it all, it really wasn't that big of a deal until the last game itself. heading into Sunday's night, everybody was pretty optimistic or pretty high on their enjoyability of the festivities so far. The first night wasn't that crazy at all. Celebrity game, Rising Star, everybody enjoyed themselves. The next game, however, I don't know why Chris Paul decided that he was going to have a big brain, high IQ moment during the skills challenge and try to finagle his way and getting the best time with him and Wemby. There was pretty disappointing, not just because Chris Paul, again, tried to have a big brain, high IQ moment, even though it's a skills challenge. It's not an IQ challenge, it's a skills challenge. But you did that jeopardizing Wemby's status in the skills challenge. And unfortunately, they got disqualified because they weren't attempting to make any of the shots at all because they were just trying to have a better time. I thought that right there was pretty foolish. I get it that your big brain IQ there moment, Chris Paul, but bro, we're there for Wemby. Let's be honest with ourselves. We're there for Wemby and we want to see him play. So that right there was disappointing. But outside of that, it is what it is. 3-point competition. It was a 3-point competition. Shout out to Tyler Hero. He came out there smacking them things. And it wasn't the greatest, but I mean, it was a bunch of 3-point shooters out there doing what they do. Then comes the dunk contest. And I think this is where the first bit of contingency happens. But in real time in San Francisco at the event, people didn't really care. I don't know how people ended their moment with this dunk contest walking away like, oh my goodness, Mac McClung should not have been in the competition. Who cares? I don't understand how people walk away with that takeaway when you are actively watching one of the greatest slam dunk participants ever. Like quite literally, Mac McClung put on a show that was amazing. Genuinely, he was doing dunks that was crazy. He cleared the middle of a car. He was clearly jumping over Shaq and did a 180 or 360, whatever he did. Like, it was genuinely some of the best dunks we've seen since Zach LaVine and him. I don't understand why people had a hard time just enjoying themselves, especially when you take into consideration what Mac McClung has done over the past 3 years. I get it, he's not an NBA player, but if we're there to just watch people dunk at a very high level, that was achieved. I just don't get it. But at the end of the day, we genuinely got to see some of the best dunks that you're probably ever going to see, and I do believe that Mac McClung should go down as one of the greatest slam dunk competition participants ever. So again, heading into the actual All-Star game itself, though it was going to be different, I was fairly optimistic. Not optimistic enough to change my flight. I still caught my flight, but I was still fairly optimistic. And it was bad. It was really, really bad. And it wasn't because of the players. There was actually defense being played. It was very engaging. More effort was being played this year than it was in previous years. And for the most part, it was enjoyable. Like, it genuinely was enjoyable. And I would actually go as far as to say that the new formatting really wasn't that much of a problem either. I would argue that the point total should increase to around 50 to 60 points because these segments of games, they kind of went through pretty quickly. You could score 40 points rather quickly with a 3-point shot, especially in a more up-tempo type of a style of basketball. So I don't think that 40 points should have been the litmus test for it. I do believe, however, Draymond had a really good point that this format does take away from the ability to break certain records at the All-Star game. And I actually do believe that's understandable. But for the most part, I enjoyed the actual basketball being played. Trae Young, nutmeg, I think it was Curry. He had a couple of highlight moments. Shea was also, he looked really, really good. Jokic had a lob. I believe to Wemby was like a big lob. I actually enjoyed myself. Really, really great. Didn't even acknowledge that LeBron wasn't on the floor. Neither was Anthony Edwards. It was really great basketball. But the problem was that there wasn't enough basketball. The problem was that at an All-Star game where I'm supposed to be watching NBA players play basketball, there wasn't enough of that because due to the formatting and how much dead space there was, it then allowed the NBA to insert a bunch of ads. And boy, did they do that. Now, I've seen a couple of people, like on Reddit and a couple other YouTubers, kind of cover this. They went on Reddit and figure out how the ad breaks went down, the flow of the actual game in real time, the 3-hour block of window time that happened. Though, shout out to those Reddit users, shout out to the NBA YouTubers out there. That wasn't suffice enough to me because it felt as if like some of these time frames were a little bit off. The counting isn't too much different, but I decided to actually sit down and rewatch it 2 times to go back and figure out how much basketball was actually being played, and I wrote it down because this was ridiculous. The amount of ads and the commentating taking away from the actual experience was ridiculous. And it really does further question that if you want these players to take it serious, if you want us to enjoy basketball, why would you dare present us a product where there's more ads and commentating and a bunch of other breaks that had nothing to do with basketball than the actual game itself? But for those who don't understand it, and this is my counting, it could be off a little bit, but again, some of the numbers are fairly similar. The actual program started at 8 o'clock. 48 minutes and 40 seconds later was tip-off. Like, the actual ball went up and they got 48 minutes and 40 seconds later. That's ridiculous. Now, I actually went back to watch a couple of older games, and, to be fair, it always takes about 30 to 40 minutes for the tip-off to actually begin, which is crazy. NBA you had to address that, but the difference is, back then, the product was better because they took the time out to interview first-time people out there, first-time players, first-time all-stars. They went to go interview coaches, other players. You know what I'm saying? They did those things. This time, what we got was just Draymond Green trashing the product, the rest of the TNT crew being ultra cringe with the things that they're saying, and bad jokes from Kevin Hart in between this. So that's what we decided to get. Hey, shout out to the NBA. And also a bunch of other ads. And right after the ads, we went right back into the game. But before we got into the game, we got a bunch of gambling ads as well, a bunch of money spreads at an all-star game. Great. So again, 48 minutes and 40 seconds to start it. Jump 5 minutes and 40 seconds into the game, we get a commercial break. We get back from the commercial break, 6 more minutes of action, another commercial break. After that commercial break, 4 more minutes of action, and then the game is done. Up until that moment, we have about 15 minutes of action that has only been played, and we're about an hour and a half into the broadcast. 15 minutes. And you know what they do next? They go into commercial break, come out of commercial break. They do a Mr. Beast challenge, which I actually didn't have that big of an issue at all. The Mr. Beast challenge was Damian Lillard was going to hit about a logo shot, 3 logo shots before a fan in the stands could hit one. The fan actually hit one. It was actually very enjoyable. Everybody went out there. I actually thought that was cool. But then they went into a game breakdown where we get to hear Draymond just give terrible commentary of what's going on. Then an awkward TNT pregame special where Kevin Hart makes a joke about Shaq dressing like a P-star.
Why are you dressed like a porn director?
Yeah, that's what we got. In between this, a couple of commercial breaks as well, but we don't get back into actual action of basketball until 25 minutes later. We actually watched a 25-minute segment that was longer than the actual basketball that we enjoyed. Crazy. The next game starts in the tournament, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, then we get a commercial break. Come back, play about 5 minutes, then we get another commercial break. Come back, they play for 8 minutes and 30 seconds, and that's the next game that was done. They go into another commercial break. Wowzers. After that, they go into E40 Too Short, the Bay. They do a whole concert. I actually enjoyed it. Then they go into another game breakdown where Draymond is just trashing the league again. I don't know why he's doing that. Another TNT pregame where we get another awkward moment between Kevin Hart and, I think it was Chuck at that time. Then we get into the final game. At this point, we're like 2 hours into the festivities at this point, and there's still another game to 40 that we have to watch. And then it was the OGs and the international players. Quick sidebar. The way that they presented this to us, they act as if like Charles and Shaq and Kenny, they decided to pick, draft their teams. But these teams are basically predetermined. They had the older players on one team, the international players on another team, and everyone else who they deemed as young players, all of them weren't young, on another team. Very cringe. They're actively forcing something on us, but it was all cringe. But after that, we go into the game. They play for about 5 minutes and they go into a commercial break. As this is going on, the broadcast is telling us that these timeouts that they're doing for the commercial break, they're already implemented into the game. They're telling us, hey, when they score about 15 to 20 points, we're going to go to timeout, and then when they go to 30 points, we're going to go into another timeout. They're telling us when the timeouts are happening before they actually happen. For someone who's in marketing, do not tell me when the ads are about to come before they come. How dumb does that sound? That's like me telling you right now, hey, I'm about to put an ad read in right now. Like, no one doesn't do that. It disrupts the flow of everything. Terrible. I don't know why they were doing it. They were doing it not only in the middle of the games, but even during the Mr. Beast challenge, Mr. Beast is actively telling them, hey, you got to hurry, make the shot because the NBA got to go to ad break.
In 30 seconds, the NBA is going to cut to a commercial, so you got to shoot quick.
It's like, fuck, bro. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. We get it. You're trying to make money. We got it. But again, final game, in the middle of the final game, and they do a 7-minute TNT tribute. Mind you, they could have done this tribute before the game even started. When they had 48 minutes, they could have did the tribute after the game. They could have did the tribute in between any of these breaks. They didn't have to have a Mr. Beast break. They didn't have to have the commercial, the concert with E40 in them. They didn't have to have that. But they decide that in the middle of the game, they're going to have a 7-minute break to do a tribute to the TNT crew because this is their last All-Star game. Thank goodness. Going to another commercial break after that too. Crazy. Come out of the commercial break, play for 9 minutes to end the game, and then finally the rest of the last last basically 30 minutes is them doing the end show, a little bit more commercials, as well as them doing obviously like the trophy ceremony, etc., etc. I did the math, and my math isn't too far from where everybody else is at. I got in total around 45, 47 minutes of actual action. Some people are saying it's even less than that, 42. I was a bit generous with some of the counting on when exactly the game came back and started. Some people might have been a bit more strict, but for the most part, everybody's numbers is relatively consistent. 45 minutes in a 3-hour block. There was more time spent watching other things than the actual game itself. There was more time of me watching Draymond trash the league, Kevin Hart making terrible jokes, Shaq making bowl references.
Oh, in the post. See? That's what I'm talking about. That Rich. Bowl ain't doing that.
More of a Mr. Beast challenge, an E40 Too Short concert, and of course ads. More of all of that than the actual game itself. 40-some minutes of basketball in a 3-hour block. Hey, Adam Silver, never again. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever do that again. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and get into it. How would I make the All-Star game better? Because of course, people are going to just say, you're just complaining. You're not giving any real solutions. Fair enough. Here's my 3-part recipe on how to make the All-Star game better. First and foremost, TNT, they no longer need to host it. Thank goodness this is their last one, because they displayed to everyone that they don't need to be doing it anymore. I don't want to hear Kevin Hart crack jokes about how 7-footers are shooting threes when they're making the threes. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear Kevin Hart make P-star jokes. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear Kenny Smith try to recreate a catchphrase that he had 20 years ago every single time someone does a dunk. I don't want to hear that. It's cringe. It's cringe when Mac McClung, I think he did his first dunk, and here go Kenny. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Mac.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Mac.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear Shaq complain and talk about Bol, who's not even in the All-Star game. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear Charles Barkley talk about defense when he was an egregious defender. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear Draymond Green trash a sport or trash an event that his generation made bad. I don't want to hear it. So TNT, thank goodness you're done. I don't want to hear you anymore. Second thing I would do, go back to East versus West, or go back to just being 2 teams. That's what you should do. There's too many times where people overreact to these blowout games as if like there weren't blowout games that occurred throughout the history of an All-Star game. Everybody's like, oh, remember back in, was it 03 when Jordan hit that fadeaway to force overtime? Yeah. You remember what happened the year before that? It was like a 15-point blowout. It wasn't close. Oh my God, they're scoring so many points, 150, 160. Bro, there's All-Star games where they were scoring 150 points in the 90s when 3-pointers weren't being attempted, and there was no overtime. In regulation, getting to 150 points with no threes. You think defense was being played then? No. Part of the reason why it feels like there was a lot of defense being played back then is because 90% of the game was being played in between the 3-point line and the paint. It was a bunch of mid-range shooting, and if you beat your player off the dribble when it comes to mids, you were immediately met with like 2 or 3 7-footers standing next to each other in the paint. Like in the 2000 All-Star game, because I watched this in San Francisco, me and B-Sos was watching it. I'm watching, I'm like, oh, I see what's going on now. And in the paint, it's Shaq, Duncan, and Kevin Garnett. Of course it feels like there's defense being played, because if I can't get a midi off, I'm driving into the lane and it's a bunch of 7-footers I have to try to score over. Yeah, that's why. No one was attempting 3, so it's not spaced out as much. So don't overreact. It's not that big of a deal. But third and finally, my way to make the NBA All-Star game better is that the multimillionaires that play this game, that benefit to the tune of millions of dollars, the league that benefits to the tune of millions of dollars due to us viewing it, those people take the game slightly more serious and just play basketball. It's not that complicated. It should never have been that complicated. It's actually a very simple fix. Play basketball. That's it. All this other stuff we're doing, incentivizing people, doing grand prizes. Like I sat there and I saw there was this report, I think on NBA Central, talking about next year they might be a 1v1 tournament and the winner wins $1 million. Bro, I did the calculations between the in-season tournament, the dunk contest, All-Star, now this 1v1, all the money that they give away during all these events now. Bro, we have the NBA giving more money, millions of dollars, to people who are already millionaires. Nearly $13 million is now going to be given out to NBA players. And you think that that's what's going to increase the viewership? Giving millions of dollars to people who are already millionaires. These NBA players are making more money now than they've ever made before. Part of the reason why the viewership has been so bad and why it was insufferable even this year is because I'm watching a product that the NBA players clearly are not taking that serious, while I'm hearing someone like Draymond complain about all the shift up as if like he and a lot of the people in his generation didn't force us down this path. Read the room. You complaining about a problem that your generation presented. All we were asking for is for y'all to try slightly a little bit more. That's it. But those are my solutions. Hey, TNT crew, good riddance. I don't ever want to hear you cover another All-Star weekend. Don't want to hear it. Go back to 2-team formats, because if you're telling me that this is the format that you're going to be able to use, and because of the nature of the formatting, there's going to be a lot of dead space, so you have to put a lot of ads in there and just breaks, I don't want to see that shit. Not even a little bit. And finally, make the players play all-star basketball. Like, I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, bro. We're sitting here trying to like reformat everything when the format was fine. It was just the effort that wasn't given. And they actually gave slightly better effort this year. They gave better effort. It was enough effort for it to be enjoyable basketball. It was just that we didn't see enough of the basketball. I don't know what to tell you, bro. This is genuinely speaking just some of the worst I've ever seen. Like, genuinely speaking, some of the worst. But hey, that's my thoughts. Again, I want to take the time out to appreciate every single last one of you who are watching this video, because if it wasn't for you, I would not even been in a position to go to San Francisco and watch these games. So I really do appreciate you. And if you want to see me crash out even more over this, because as I get done with this video, I'm about to make a video crashing out on everything that Draymond said over the weekend, some of the dumb remarks that Stephen A. Smith made over the weekend as well, what Kevin Durant decided, what everybody said about All-Star Weekend in the slam dunk contest, in particular with Stephen A. Smith. I'm about to react and crash out over it on my other channel, Foot on the Line. That video will come out either the same day this one does or tomorrow. So go check that out. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.